Everybody cheated one way or other back then, you know, kind of what they looked like back in the day. Everybody was doing something.
Did you ever do that?
No. But I did do one time. This is a Daytona and Talladega deck lid that we built. Got a adjustable spoiler.
Really?
Which is totally illegal. We could lean this thing back. We had a hydraulic cylinder in the middle right there, and we had a hydraulic cylinder hid under the dash with hydraulic lines snuck through the shock where it had it where it was hid, and we could lean that spoiler back probably take 20 degrees out of it, and we never got caught with it. But they caught, I believe it was Bill Davis's car that ran into Joy, which was running, but he had hydraulic deck pins, and I think they fined him 50 grand.
Man.
You know, the cylinder's hid in here, but got it kind of covered up pretty well where you can't see it.
Oh yeah, I could see the little spring in there. It is really hard to see. You'd never be looking.
And you couldn't. They never found that. But when they found Randy LaJoy's deal, and they found him 50,000, I said, well, I can't afford that. It's one thing to leave Daytona broke. It's another to leave bankrupt, and that's what would happen if I got caught. So I took it off.
What year were you using this?
I used it a couple years. I think might have been maybe 92.
Now, how exactly did this work? Is that is this silicone between the base of the spoiler and the deck lid, so it's flexible?
Well, that was just, I think we silicone it, then we cut it so you couldn't see it where it was. And then after we qualified, we didn't need it to work. So we, but I think we probably cut it loose where it would.
Okay, yeah.
And we put springs behind the bolts. The springs kept it up tight for inspection, but the hydraulic cylinder was so strong that you could look in the rearview mirror going down the track, and we turned that the cylinder on the dash. You just watched it lean back. So I kind of laughed to myself. Said that's a pretty good trick there.
Yeah, it is. So were the springs also kind of a fail-safe if you busted if the hydraulic system busted out or something, that the springs would push it back to normal?
Right. So you just have to let off the pressure on it was like, kind of like brakes, As long as you put the pressure on it, it's going to lean it back. But all you had to do is to back up. It had a T-handle that could stick in a hole, and it would, and you put the pressure, lean it down, or get the pressure off, and it would come back. Yeah. And we have even just used light springs on the spoiler back in the day, and just let the wind, the air over the front top of the car, push it down, and that worked too.
Really?
But it was kind of, then they didn't have weights that they put on the spoiler, and all they didn't, all they used is a tape measure to check the height and stuff. So at the time, Elmo Langley was one of the inspectors, which he used to race. Good guy, loved him to death actually, and he didn't catch it, but all you had to do was blow on it and it would lean down.
What kind of hydraulic cylinder was actually hidden inside the trunk? Where'd you source that from?
Well, this was under here, inside. The one for this end was behind there, but the other.
So there was two.
There's two, yeah, and you just had to bleed them. But it was like a clutch cylinder.
And it would push on, because all I could see when you look in there, like you built this thing really well. I'm looking in there, and I see is
I don't remember if the cylinder's still in there, and it probably is. But like I said, hit it really good. But all this it's a slave cylinder, and when like I said, when you put that T-handle, it was mounted where it wouldn't move, and it had a weight that would hold the entrance to the cylinder. Then when I screwed the T-handle in, it would push the fluid down here, and then push it back to here and lay the spoiler down.
What was the fluid pushing on? Was it pushing on the back of the springs? Because all I could see in there was, it looks like a valve spring on a long bolt.
Yeah, that's where it would. So it would bend, but it was the
Like, where was the actual linkage that was doing the angle changing? I couldn't see it.
I don't know if the cylinder is still in there.
Okay, yeah, I see the spring
Yes.
on there.
I don't know if it's the still cylinder. It should be in there, but it's going to be way up here.
Maybe it's on this side. I don't know. You can see all kinds of stuff going on in there. But man, if you were looking for something, you would just be like, "Why do you got blue springs on your freaking bolts?" Or you just think it's flexible. You can't see. You can see a little bit of a plate, something welded in here, and something right there. But then you got this right there. It's probably hiding it.
Right. Well, actually, this thing has 2 cylinders in it. That's one of them. Somewhere in there.
Okay, yeah, I could kind of see the fitting.
Yeah. And I got it hid here where you can't see. So.
Yeah, you definitely thought about this. From sitting here trying to find it, and I can't find it. You did a really good job.
Yeah.
This needs to be on a wall or in a museum somewhere.
Well, I sold my Daytona car. When 93 or 94, I think I quit. And somebody wanted that car turnkey, so I sold it turnkey. Yeah, a couple months later, a guy called and said, "What's this cylinder up under the dash here?" I said, "Oh, that's just something I used to do."
Yeah, you can see the braided line going through there all the way down. Okay, yeah, I can see the fitting where it goes into the cylinder now, looking at it this way in there. I don't know if the people watching this can see it. If you can't, you just have to take my word for it. It's in there.
The rear spoiler used to be one piece, but then they changed it to 2 pieces. Then it was a lot easier to do when it was 1 cylinder. But you just put your rod. You had a slave cylinder in there, and you had a rod, and it pushed against the back of the spoiler, the base of the spoiler, the mountain base, and then to just lean it back. But it's a little more complicated because it had these 2 cylinders. But it worked.
Huh. So what other kind of things have you had confiscated that they did catch?
Had a 5-inch clutch, the rule of 7 1/4. Actually, they were looking for it because it was somebody ratted somebody out that somebody was running a 5-inch clutch, and I think they caught us at Phoenix, and the inspector said, "We were looking for that little clutch, but we didn't think you had one." But I have one, but they got it. So
Is that just for the decreased rotating weight?
yeah, and then Gary Nelson caught mine. I was working for Bud Moore, and I was a crew chief, and I didn't hide it very well. They were showing 3 ignition boxes, and Nelson come by and said, "When you decide which 2 ignition boxes you're going to run, so bring me the other one." So I went to parts truck and bought a brand new one, took it to him, and said, "That's not the one I saw." I said, "Bring me the one I saw." So it cost Bud Moore 10 grand. So.
Were you less cautious about that stuff when it wasn't you that was going to get the fine?
No, I never worried about getting caught, because that's what, I mean, everybody cheated one way or other back then, I don't know if you ever heard the stories, but they used to say Darrell Walter would say on the radio, "Bombs away," and then when it was doing, he pulled the plug and lead shotgun running out of the car. So everybody was doing something.
Did you ever do that?
No. Mm-mm. But I did do one time. At Bristol, I put water in the right front tire, in the inner liner.
In the tire?
In the tire. But then there was tubes. We ran tubes for, now they're tubeless. But I filled that thing up with water. I think we took over 200 pounds of weight out of the car. And go through inspection, legal, weight-wise. We get on pit road, I stuck a nail in the tire, and you can change one tire without penalty, without going back through scales and all that. So I changed that one tire. When I took that tire off, it was 200 pounds lighter. It helped. We ran top 10 all day long. So never got caught with that either. So when you take 200 pounds off the car, I mean, it drove like it was a go-kart. It was just so easy to maneuver without that 200 pounds. So
you were just using that for the you were going through inspection with the heavy tire and then taking it off to race.
Right.
You weren't using that as some type of ballast.
No, just to make a car lighter. There's stories that Junior had a car at Wilkesboro that had both right side wheels banded and full of lead, and then, and they went through tech with that and legal weight and all that, and they were going to change them the first caution. But it was a long time before we had a caution. And lead, absorbs heat really quick, and the right front tire got so hot from the lead, the brakes temperature, that it blew the right front tire. And the driver, I think it was Terry Labonte, Terry barely got in the wall, and that called a caution and all that. So, didn't really hurt the car. So they come in, finally get those tires off, and he wins the race.
How did the car run after you had the cut tire?
Well, believe it or not, it messed the front end up a little bit, and we need to go back to the shop and check it and see what it did, because I think it helped it.
They never saw anybody changing the tire and the guy's throwing his back out trying to pick up this 200-pound tire.
The car actually ran better after you crashed?
I believe it did.
What's funny about mine is when you took it off the car, it looked like the car weight was still on it because the thing weighed over 200 pounds. So, but nobody ever caught it. And at the same time, we had a helmet full of lead, and my crew chief, we got the helmet out of the car. This is on pit road, and my crew chief was carrying the helmet back through the truck, and the strap broke. He said, "Dadgummit, I'm not never doing that again." So,
do you still have a lead helmet?
No, I don't know what whatever we did with it. I mean, everybody used to have the goggles. We always raced with a fresh pair of goggles, and the goggle box would be on the dash, and it would be full of lead block. So we even had spray containers, like with WD-40 or SD-20. That was a cleaner everybody used, and it was lead. So and we'd stick it in the vent hose in the back window, and then when we got through teching, we'd pull that thing out. And if somebody saw you with it, it's just a can of cleaner. So never got caught with that either.
Huh. Did you ever mess around with nitrous?
No, well, actually I did, but I never got it to work. I don't know if we didn't have it jetted right to the motor, but we never got it to work. And what I did have was a winch in the car one time that was hooked to the rear axle, that you could push the winch and it pulled back the car down.
Oh, you put a winch in the car?
Yeah.
I've never heard that or anything like that before.
Yeah. And had it routed, back to the center, the bar behind the seat. We had pulleys and all that sort of stuff that it could, wouldn't be bound up, and it went through. When we got it back to the rear end house, we put it through the oil housing vent line, and you couldn't see it. But you sit there and push the button, the car do like this.
Did you do that on super speedways?
Yeah.
You ever get caught with that?
No. Nope.
Did you know anybody else that had a winch in their car?
I never heard anybody with a winch, but a lot of them had those hydraulics in the rear jack screws. So I think Ricky Rudd got caught at Talladega with it, something like that. And actually, I bought a used race car, was wrecked from Junior Johnson. But when I went to pick it up, they said, "Wait a few minutes, you got to take something off of it." And what they were taking off of it was the bracket that held the valve for their deal for the rear jack screws. So I mean, and it was fun back then trying to do that. You can't do it now. I mean, it's just like at Charlotte, Carl Long had a motor that was minutely too big, and he paid for that motor from a reputable engine builder. And then what they do, they suspended him, and charged him a fine of $250,000. Who can pay that?
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't anything he did.
He didn't even know. It was
didn't even know. So that's why we can't do something today, because we just can't. And the little guy, they would make more. They would make an example out of, because it didn't hurt them. You do that to Gibbs or RCR or whatever, then that hurts the sport. They're not worried about us. So, and they will let that pass more than they would let something like that pass for us.
I'm still hung up on this winch thing. Where did you actually have the winch itself in the
In the
chassis?
battery box.
In the battery box.
Yeah.
Huh. Did you have to have an extra big battery box or a smaller battery? How did you fit it
probably
in?
had to have a smaller battery, but like I said, that's 30-something years ago also. So
I mean, that was before the days where you could just go to Harbor Freight and get a little winch. I don't know how big winches were back then.
it was about the size, the size of a quart bottle of milk or something, and a little longer. I think I still got it on the shelf back there.
Really?
Yeah.
You want to go see if it's back there?
See if we can find it. This is the stuff we built back in
Oh yeah.
back in mid '80s that skirted the NASCAR rules. NASCAR had a rule that you had to have this diameter hole in the center of the manifold, and a 1-inch block had to go on top of that down in the plenum. So we figured out, and it wasn't anything against it, that we could make that move, and it would go up against the restrictor plate, and it's about 50 horsepower doing that, because it straightened the air up coming through the plate and pull more as it straightened it up. And this is one that we made that we could pull that up with the carburetor studs. But this is the one that when NASCAR finally figured out what we were doing, they made us weld them, because they knew what those was slider. And there's a car that won 2 cup races that outrun Davey Allison that had these sliders that weren't legal, but they won the race. NASCAR didn't catch it. But next time to the racetrack, which is Daytona in February, they had a disgruntled employee that told NASCAR about it, and they got caught. So
Was it McClure?
no, no. This is after McClure, I think.
Okay. Interesting, because we did see
they had something too, because they ran too well.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of hours, on the floor bench and the dyno figuring this, and I figured this out from the rules that it's if you hold these 2 guidelines, this is legal. So that's what we did. I mean, a lot of time on the mill.
You guys like experimental pieces in there too.
Right. Yeah, and that's some stuff we worked on. This is that's a slider. And that's kind of what they looked like back in the day. I don't know if it's...
Were those bolts set screws for something?
I don't remember.
Were they to keep it from sliding up too far when you were testing it?
No. And we kind of figured out, accidentally, we had ways to this, like I said, we pulled this up with the carburetor studs, but we figured out that the airspeed coming through those holes was so fast that it would push itself up against the plate. So we didn't need any kind of tricks. Let's see, like this one, you see where this is machined out. We had a rod, angled rod that come in here and stick in the side of this, and when we tighten it up, it would tighten the carburetor down, it would pull this up and it to the plate. So a lot of time, a lot of time on this stuff.
Who was the back there screwing around with this?
Me?
Was it just you?
Yeah.
Or did you have somebody helping you with experience with,
No.
like McClure had some guy from NASA or something. I don't know if you got a guy from NASA in here, but somebody.
No, it was just me. Lot of hours.
Once people started figuring out how to do this, how did you catch wind of the trail to go down to do the same thing?
I figured it out way before a lot of people did.
Really?
We had a test at Talladega. I think it was a 3-day test, and the time we got this kind of where we wanted it, we showed up for the last day of testing. It was Pontiac paid for a test, and we showed up at the test, and those guys had already been testing 2.5 days. I think we got there around 12 and got on the racetrack and ran 2.5 laps and ran 3 miles an hour faster than anybody had tested. we loaded back up and came home. So it worked.
Is that another that manifold over there? It's got is that
Yeah, that's
spacers
one.
welded to it? Oh yeah, it's got the
Yeah, that's
plate slug in it.
one of them. But like I said, this was, we used to have them whatever to slide, and then NASCAR said, no, you got to pin them or weld them. So
Did you ever use the plastic hooter tube things?
no. That was smart too. But back in the day, Bob Allison won Daytona. When we first went to Restrictor plate, they didn't furnish our gaskets. We could use our own gasket.
Yeah.
And Bobby's guys made a gasket the right same size as the plate, and put it on top of the plate. And even though it was only a 16th thick, they radiused the edge of the gasket, and what it did, it gave the air a direction to go through that hole. It's just like, you could take a restrictor plate and take a knife and just deburr the edge, 25 horsepower. So they figured it out, and they won the Daytona 500. But it wasn't long for NASCAR. All right, we're going to furnish the gaskets. So
we're standing here with Jimmy Means in front of his original race shop, and we're gonna go in there and he's gonna show us the evolution of it, all the things, old pictures, stories. And when did you move into this place?
1982.
1982.
Yep.
And it's still, is that your old truck too?
Yes.
When did you start hauling stuff around with that?
Yeah, about 78.
I feel like I'm in a time machine right now. This is awesome. But you still do current cars in here too, which is
Yes.
even cooler. So
Yes.
let's check it out.